I never thought I would find myself in this situation, but here I am, sharing my story with whoever might need to hear it. I guess that's what you do when your life takes a nosedive into chaos. My name is Jake, and until recently I thought I had a solid marriage. I was married to Sarah for 7 years, and while there were bumps along the way, I believed we were on the right track. I mean, we had our little challenges like any couple. Work stress, financial worries, and the occasional disagreement over dishes in the sink or whose turn it was to take out the trash. Normal stuff, right? Things started shifting about 6 months ago. At first, it was subtle. Sarah, who used to be the first one at home after work, began to stay late at the office. I brushed it off as just part of her job as a marketing executive. Sure, she started coming home with less energy and more excuses about late meetings, but I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe that my wife was just dedicated to her career. I mean, who wouldn't want to climb the corporate ladder? In this economy. But then the little things started to pile up. I caught her changing her phone password, and when I asked her about it, she just waved it off. It's work-related, Jake. You know how it is. Then there were the moments when she would be on her phone, laughing at something that seemed way too private for just casual texting. The gut feeling that something wasn't right gnawed at me, but I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous, paranoid husband who couldn't trust his wife. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I arrived home a bit earlier than usual. I walked into the living room, and there it was, the unmistakable sound of her giggling. It was light and carefree. It was the kind of laughter we shared in the early days of our relationship before life became so serious. But this time it was different. I peeked into the kitchen, and there she was, standing too close to a man I didn't recognize, her therapist, Dr. Miller. I felt my heart drop. Dr. Miller, the same guy who had been helping Sarah with her anxiety about work and life in general. I had never thought of him as anything but a professional. But in that moment, watching them together, it felt like they were sharing a moment that was just too intimate for a therapist and his patient. I could see chemistry, sparks flying. It was sickening. I wanted to scream, but instead I just stood there, frozen. After they separated, Sarah returned to the living room, casual as ever. She didn't notice me standing there, and when she finally did, the surprise on her face was almost comedic. "Oh hey, I didn't expect you home so soon," she said, her voice a pitch too high for comfort. I could feel my blood boiling. My mind raced through every moment, every excuse she had given me for staying late, every time she dismissed my worry about her changing behavior. It all clicked into place like a horrific puzzle. I needed evidence, something concrete that I could confront her with, and so began my obsession with tracking down the truth. Over the next few weeks, I played the role of the unsuspecting husband. I started watching her more closely, noting when she left the house, when she received texts, and how often she saw Dr. Miller. Every time I saw a new text message come through her phone, every time she laughed, I felt that familiar burn of betrayal creeping into my chest. Eventually, my instincts were confirmed. A text popped up on her phone one evening while she was in the shower. I picked it up and my heart sank as I read it. "Can't wait to see you tonight. It feels so good to finally be honest with each other. Love you." I felt sick. I should have put the phone down, but something snapped in me. I took a screenshot. I had what I needed. Now I had to confront her. I was ready to expose her infidelity, ready to confront both her and Dr. Miller. I couldn't let this go unpunished. But first, I needed to give Sarah a chance to explain. Little did I know that was just the beginning of a whirlwind of deceit, confrontation, and the start of my plan for revenge. How do you even begin to process the realization that the person you thought you could trust most in the world has been lying to you? I didn't know what I was feeling. I was angry, betrayed, and hurt. But most of all, I felt a fire igniting within me. A plan was brewing, and it was time to take action. The confrontation happened the next evening. I'd stewed all day over the revelation, mentally crafting the scenes in my head. I wanted to come across as calm and collected, but inside, I was a storm of rage and heartbreak. I wasn't sure how Sarah would react, but I was determined to get the truth out of her. When Sarah walked in from work that day, I'd set the stage. I sat on the couch, the lights dimmed just enough to feel serious but not overly dramatic. The television was off, the atmosphere thick with tension. I watched as she entered, her eyes darting around the room, sensing something was off. "Hey Jake, what's up?" she chirped, but I could hear the undertone of nervousness in her voice. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my tone even. I gestured for her to sit down. "I know about Dr. Miller." Her face went pale. It was a reaction I had anticipated, but seeing it in real time was enough to pull the rug from under my feet. She hesitated, her eyes flickering with a mix of confusion and defiance. "What do you mean you know?" she asked, crossing her arms defensively. "I read your texts," I said bluntly, pulling my phone from my pocket to show her the damning screenshot. "This isn't just therapy, is it?" Sarah's jaw dropped, and for a moment I thought she might faint. "Jake, I can explain," she stammered, her voice racing. "It's not what you think, not what I think." I echoed, incredulous. "You're telling me this isn't an affair, you're sending love notes to your therapist." "It's complicated," she said, looking more flustered. "Dr. Miller has been helping me with some really difficult things. I got confused, okay? Confused." I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing in the silence of our home. "You confused love for your therapist with your husband. How the hell does that happen?" She looked at me, her eyes widening as she sought the right words, but I could see the desperation in her expression. "It was only supposed to be therapeutic. I never meant for it to go this far, I swear. I couldn't take it anymore." "Save it, Sarah. I don't want to hear any more lies. You've already betrayed me. Do you think I'm going to just sit here and listen to a bunch of excuses?" The hurt in my voice was palpable. I knew I was sounding harsh, but I had to. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to happen," she pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's just, I've been feeling so lost lately, and he listened to me in ways you haven't. I thought I could trust him." "Trust? Is that what you call this? You've betrayed my trust in the worst way possible by sleeping with him while pretending everything was fine at home." I shouted. Each word felt like daggers, sharp and unrelenting. She sat there, her face crumpled, and for a moment I felt a pinch of pity. But then the anger surged back. How could I pity someone who had torn my heart apart like this? "Have you told him about us? About our marriage?" I asked, my voice low but filled with fury. "Yes, I mean no, I didn't tell him everything," she rushed to explain. "I didn't know what to say. I was confused, Jake. I thought you'd never find out." "Of course you did," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "You thought you could keep this secret and still have a happy marriage at the same time." Her eyes softened and she reached out, trying to grab my hand. "Please don't throw everything away. We can work through this. I love you." The words stung, a bitter reminder of everything I thought we had. "You love me. Love isn't about cheating, Sarah. Love is about honesty, loyalty, and trust. You've shattered all of that." I stood up, pacing the room. "I'm not sure I even know who you are anymore. You're not the woman I married. I don't even recognize this person sitting in front of me." She started crying, her face falling into her hands. "I'm so sorry, Jake. I made a mistake. I wasn't myself. I was seeking comfort in all the wrong places. I thought I could navigate my issues without hurting you. By sleeping with your therapist." I shot back, the bitterness in my voice cutting through the air. "How could you think that wouldn't hurt me? I didn't think it would go that far." She whispered through tears, but I was done listening to her excuses. The emotional impact of this confrontation was overwhelming. I felt like I was being dragged through a whirlwind of confusion and anger. My heart ached, not just with betrayal, but with the realization that the love I thought was solid was built on fragile foundations. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. I needed to think clearly. In that moment, I felt a shift in my perspective. The betrayal was not just about Sarah. It was about the man she had chosen over me, Dr. Miller. He was supposed to help her heal, not exploit her vulnerability. I could feel fury rising inside me, a deep desire for revenge. I knew I had to act. With that realization, I decided to take control. My marriage might be on the rocks, but I wasn't going to let this slide without consequences. It was time to unleash the storm on both her and Dr. Miller. I would expose the truth, and karma would hit hard. This I promised myself. After the confrontation with Sarah, I felt an unsettling calm wash over me. The initial shock and hurt had morphed into something much darker, focused anger. I knew that Sarah was only part of the problem. Dr. Miller, the supposed professional, had taken advantage of the trust placed in him, and I was determined to make him pay for the damage he had caused in both our lives. I spent the next few days mulling over my options. I needed proof, something I could use to expose him. I began researching Dr. Miller online, looking for anything I could find, reviews, complaints, anything that might suggest he wasn't the upstanding therapist he appeared to be. I spent hours poring through websites and forums, and what I found shocked me. There were whispers of other patients coming forward, claiming that Dr. Miller had crossed ethical boundaries. I felt a sick thrill course through me. I wasn't the only one who had been wronged. He had a pattern, a history of using his position to manipulate vulnerable individuals. I made notes, collecting information and piecing together a timeline. It was time to gather my evidence and prepare for my revenge. As I went down this rabbit hole, I realized I wasn't just exposing a cheater. I was potentially saving others from the same fate as Sarah. I called a few of the reviewers who had left comments on forums about him, posing as someone curious about his services. I wanted to hear their experiences firsthand. Each story was more appalling than the last, patients who were manipulated into crossing lines they never thought they would. I could feel the anger boiling inside me as I listened to their heartbreaking tales. One woman, Lisa, opened up about a similar experience. "I thought I could trust him," she said, her voice trembling as she recalled how Dr. Miller had made her feel safe, only to later exploit her vulnerabilities. "He was supposed to help me, but it felt like he was just playing with my emotions." After talking to Lisa, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't just motivated by personal revenge. I was on a mission to expose a predator hiding in plain sight. I decided to compile everything I had learned and create a detailed report. I wanted to approach the licensing board and make sure they understood the severity of Dr. Miller's actions. But first, I had to confront Sarah again. I needed her to understand the consequences of her actions, and I wanted to give her one final chance to come clean. I knew she was still angry and scared, but I couldn't let her off the hook so easily. When I told her I had been gathering information about Dr. Miller, her reaction was defensive. "Jake, please. I know I messed up, but you can't go after him. He helped me. You're just going to make things worse." "Worse?" I shot back. "You think it can get any worse than what you've done? You've betrayed me, you've betrayed our marriage, and if he's been doing this to you, to others, I can't just sit back and let it slide." She looked conflicted, and for a moment I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "Jake, I didn't realize he was manipulative. I thought he cared about me. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was just so lost." "Lost?" I echoed, incredulous. "You were not only lost, you were reckless. You've ruined everything between us, and now I have the chance to make sure he pays for what he's done, not just to you but to others like you." Her expression shifted from fear to anger. "You think this is going to fix things? You think going after him will make me love you again? You're wrong. You're only hurting yourself." I could feel my frustration bubbling over. "This isn't about us anymore, Sarah. It's about righting a wrong. You need to understand this. You opened the door to this chaos, and now I'm going to walk through it. If you really love me, you'll see that I'm doing this for both of us." But as I looked into her eyes, all I could see was the defiance and stubbornness that had led her to betray me in the first place. It became painfully clear that she was still more concerned about protecting Dr. Miller than taking responsibility for her actions. That night, I sat down with my laptop, poring over everything I had gathered about the therapist. I drafted a multi-page report detailing his unethical practices, the testimonials I had collected, and a summary of how he had manipulated Sarah. I made sure to include my own experience, how he had crossed a line by getting involved with a patient he was supposed to help. The following day, I gathered my materials, ready to file a complaint to the state board that issued therapy licenses. I felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that I was taking concrete steps against someone who had caused so much pain. As I walked into the building, I felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with fear. I was stepping into territory that could potentially change everything. I had no idea how the board would react or if they would take my report seriously, but I knew I had to try. I approached the receptionist and asked to file a formal complaint against Dr. Miller. I have documentation regarding his unethical behavior, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. She nodded, taking my information. Please fill out this form and we'll get back to you once we review it. I spent the next hour detailing everything I knew, the weight of the moment heavy on my shoulders. It felt surreal, like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to leap without knowing where I would land. After submitting my report, I walked out of the building, a mix of relief and anxiety washing over me. I had done what I set out to do, but I knew this was only the beginning. I was prepared for pushback from Sarah and possibly even Dr. Miller. Whatever happened next, I was ready to face the consequences head-on. The storm that had been brewing inside me now felt like a full-blown hurricane. I was on a path of revenge, but I also understood that the aftermath would not only impact them, it could impact me too. But for now, I was focused on one thing, making sure that Dr. Miller faced the repercussions of his actions. I needed to take control of my life, and this was the first step. The days following my complaint against Dr. Miller blurred together in a haze of anxiety and anticipation. I was acutely aware of how my life was shifting beneath my feet. I had ignited a storm, and now I was left waiting for the fallout. Sarah and I had barely spoken since that confrontation. Our interactions were reduced. Stilted exchanges and tense silence. It felt like living with a stranger. I knew she was unhappy, and honestly, I didn't care. I was done trying to understand her perspective. The only thing that mattered now was holding Dr. Miller accountable for what he had done. I was consumed by the idea of exposing him, and I began to collect even more evidence, reaching out to other patients who had shared their stories with me. They were all willing to provide statements, and I felt a surge of purpose. One evening, after a long day of gathering information, I returned home to find Sarah sitting on the couch, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. The sight of her made my heart ache, but instead of sympathy, all I felt was anger. "Jake," she said, her voice trembling, "I've been thinking about everything. I realize how much I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry." I crossed my arms, bracing myself for whatever excuse she was about to give. "You're sorry? You don't get to just say that. You need to understand the consequences of your actions." "I know. I understand now that it was wrong to get involved." With him, she continued, her eyes pleading. "But I don't want us to end like this. We can fix things, Jake. I love you." "Love? You think that's enough?" I shot back, incredulous. "You threw that away the moment you decided to sleep with your therapist. You've shattered my trust." "I know, and I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I just want a chance to show you I can be better, please." Her voice cracked, and for a moment I felt a flicker of something, pity maybe. But I quickly extinguished it. "I'm not ready for that," I said firmly. "I've got bigger problems to deal with than your feelings right now." The admission stung, but I knew it was true. Dr. Miller was still out there, and I was determined to make sure he faced the consequences of his actions. Days turned into weeks, and as I awaited a response from the licensing board, the tension in our house escalated. Sarah's desperation grew, and she started to resort to manipulative tactics. She would cry, and then she'd get angry, switching from remorseful to defensive within moments. I was a punching bag for her. Conflicting emotions, and I knew I had to stand strong. Then one afternoon I received a phone call from the state board. My heart raced as I picked up the phone. "Mr. Thompson," the voice on the other end said, "we have reviewed your complaint against Dr. Miller, and we'd like to schedule a hearing to discuss the allegations further." Excitement shot through me, but it was quickly overshadowed by nerves. "What does this mean?" "It means you will have a chance to present your evidence, along with any witnesses you have. We take these matters seriously, and if the evidence supports your claims, we will take appropriate action." I hung up the phone, a mix of dread and hope coursing through me. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, the chance to expose Dr. Miller and confront him about his manipulation. But a part of me wondered if I was doing the right thing. Would I be dragging Sarah down with me in this battle for justice? I started preparing for the hearing, gathering all the evidence I had collected. I contacted Lisa and the other women who had agreed to speak up, explaining the situation and the urgency of their participation. They were supportive and willing to stand with me, which gave me strength. I was no longer alone in this fight. As the hearing date approached, the atmosphere in my home became unbearable. Sarah was on edge, and it only fueled my resolve. I could see she was scared, but I wasn't interested in comforting her anymore. I was focused on my path, and I wouldn't let her guilt derail me. The morning of the hearing arrived, and I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach as I walked into the building. The sterile environment felt oppressive, but I was determined. I took a deep breath and reminded myself of why I was there. I was standing up for myself, for the other women, and for anyone who had been exploited by someone they trusted. When my name was called, I stepped into the room, heart pounding. The walls felt like they were closing in as I stood before the panel. They were a mix of serious faces, scribbling notes as I recounted everything I knew about Dr. Miller. I talked about Sarah, how she had been manipulated, and the impact of his actions on our lives. I spoke passionately, fueled by anger and a desire for justice. After I finished, one of the board members asked, "Do you have evidence to support your claims?" I nodded, handing over the collected statements and documentation from other patients. As I watched them read through the materials, I felt a rush of hope. Maybe this would lead to a change. Then it was time for the witnesses to speak. Each one shared their heartbreaking experiences, describing how Dr. Miller had crossed boundaries and exploited their vulnerabilities. I felt their pain as they spoke, and it strengthened my resolve. It was a powerful moment, a group of women coming together to expose a man who had abused his power. After an exhausting few hours, the hearing concluded, and I stepped out of the building with a mix of exhilaration and exhaustion. I had done everything I could, but now it was in the board's hands. All I could do was wait and hope that justice would prevail. When I returned home, Sarah was quiet, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I spoke the truth," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Now we wait to see how they respond." Her face fell, and I saw a hint of fear in her eyes. "What if they don't believe you?" "Then we keep fighting," I asserted, my determination unwavering. "But this isn't just about me anymore, Sarah. It's bigger than us. It's about protecting others." As we stood there in the silence of our home, I knew that things would never be the same between us. I had embarked on a journey of revenge, but it had also turned into a fight for accountability. I was ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant facing the consequences in my own life. I had taken a stand, and I wouldn't back down now. The waiting period that followed the hearing felt like an eternity. A thick tension hung in the air of our home, and each day dragged on with uncertainty. I was consumed by thoughts of Dr. Miller and how my fight against him might unfold. My mind raced with scenarios of how the board would respond. Sarah was also on edge, and I could see her struggle to keep her emotions in check. The days passed in silence, filled with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I could sense her desire for reconciliation, but I was still so hurt and angry that I couldn't bring myself to consider it. I had been deeply betrayed, and while a part of me wanted to move forward, another part felt trapped in the past, grappling with her infidelity. Then one evening, just as I was about to settle down for what felt like another monotonous night, my phone rang. It was the state board calling. My heart raced as I answered, anticipation flooding my veins. "Mr. Thompson," the board member said, "we have concluded our review of the evidence presented during the hearing, and we'd like to discuss the outcome with you." "Is it good news?" I asked, anxiety and hope battling within me. "Please come down to our office. We'll explain everything in person." The drive to their office felt like a blur. My mind was racing, heart pounding. What had they decided? What would happen to Dr. Miller? I pulled into the parking lot and took a deep breath to compose myself. Before stepping inside the building, my palms were sweaty and I could barely keep my racing thoughts in check. When I entered the conference room, I was greeted by the same serious faces, but this time there was a glimmer of something, maybe satisfaction. They gestured for me to take a seat, and I did, my heart pounding in my chest. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Thompson," the lead board member began. "After a thorough review of the evidence and testimonials provided, we have found sufficient grounds to recommend disciplinary action against Dr. Miller." A wave of relief washed over me, but I knew I needed to hear more. What kind of action? I pressed, leaning forward. He will be suspended pending a full investigation into his conduct. Additionally, we will be notifying the state's medical board of the findings, and they will determine whether his license will be revoked permanently. I felt the weight of the world lift off my shoulders. It wasn't just a victory for me, it was a victory for all those who had come forward. I smiled, feeling a sense of empowerment. "Thank you," I said, my voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for taking this seriously. We appreciate your courage in coming forward with your claims. It's crucial for these matters to be addressed," another board member said. "We encourage you to continue advocating for those who have suffered similar experiences." As I left the building, a mix of emotions flooded over me. I felt powerful, vindicated, and ready to take on the world. But part of me also felt apprehensive about what might come next. Would Dr. Miller retaliate? How would Sarah react to this development? When I returned home, I found Sarah in the living room, her eyes wide as she sensed something had changed. "What happened?" she asked, her voice laced with anxiety. "They're suspending Dr. Miller," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "He's under investigation for his conduct." Her face fell, and I could see the conflict playing out in her mind. "So he might lose his license?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I shared everything I had. "The board took it seriously," I replied, feeling a sense of pride in my voice. "It's not just about us anymore, Sarah. This is about protecting others from what he's done." Her eyes filled with tears. "And what about us, Jake? Where do we go from here?" I shook my head, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "I don't know, Sarah. You've hurt me deeply, and I'm not sure how to forgive that. This isn't just going to magically fix everything between us." "I can't blame you for feeling that way," she said, her voice breaking. "I never should have gotten involved with him. I was weak, and I should have turned to you. I want to make things right." I looked at her, torn between wanting to comfort her and wanting to hold her accountable for her actions. "It's not that simple. Trust is broken. You have to understand how deep this goes. I'm still processing everything." "I know I understand," she replied, her voice pleading. "But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. I don't want to lose you, Jake." I wanted to believe her, but the scars from her betrayal were still fresh. "Sarah, I need time. Time to think about what I want, about what we had. I can't just jump back into our old life." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll give you space, but please know I want to fight for us. I want to prove to you that I can be better." "I appreciate that," I said, my voice softening despite my resolve to remain distant. "But you need to understand this is a journey for both of us. You have to fight for your own healing, too." As the days passed, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The healing process would take time, and while I was ready to confront Dr. Miller's consequences, I also had to acknowledge the impact of Sarah's infidelity on my own emotional landscape. We were at a crossroads, and how we moved forward would determine the direction of our lives. For now, I was focused on advocating for others and ensuring Dr. Miller faced the repercussions of his actions. I started reaching out to support groups for individuals affected by manipulative therapists, hoping to connect with more victims and help them find their voices. In the midst of my own turmoil, I found purpose, a way to transform my pain into something meaningful. But as I ventured down this new path, I knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. It would take more than just time to heal my relationship with Sarah. It would take a lot of hard work, honesty, and possibly even forgiveness. For the first time, I felt a sense of hope mingled with apprehension about what the future might hold. The battle against Dr. Miller had ignited a spark of resilience within me, one that I intended to carry forward as I navigated the complexities of my life and relationship. The weeks following the board's decision were a whirlwind of emotions, but I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I had taken a stand against Dr. Miller, and now I was focused on helping others who had experienced similar pain. I found solace in organizing meetings with support groups, connecting with victims, and sharing stories that highlighted the importance of holding professionals accountable for their actions. In a strange way, the betrayal had led me down a path of empowerment. Sarah, on the other hand, was still trying to find her footing. She began attending therapy herself, not with Dr. Miller but with a new therapist who specialized in marital issues and infidelity. I genuinely hoped this would help her understand the depth of her actions and the pain they caused. Each week, she would come home and share insights from her sessions, and I would listen, albeit cautiously. I was still grappling with my feelings, and as much as I wanted to support her, I couldn't ignore the wounds that still stung. One evening, Sarah sat me down after dinner, her eyes serious and earnest. "Jake, I know I've hurt you deeply and I can't change what I did, but I want to show you that I can be better. I've made changes in myself and I'm committed to our marriage, but it's going to take time." I nodded, feeling a mix of hope and skepticism. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but it's not just about words. You need to show me through your actions. I need to see that you're serious about healing, not just for me, but for yourself." "I understand," she replied, her voice steady. "I want to rebuild your trust, but I know it won't happen overnight. I'm willing to fight for us, Jake." Those words hung heavy in the air as I contemplated the possibility of reconciliation. It was a chance for both of us to grow, to learn from the mistakes that had nearly torn us apart. I realized that while my fight against Dr. Miller was important, so was my personal journey toward healing and understanding what I truly wanted. As the days turned into weeks, I began to see small changes in Sarah. She was more open about her feelings, willing to discuss her vulnerabilities and making an effort to reconnect with me. We started having deep conversations about our hopes and fears, and I found myself slowly letting my guard down. One night, as we sat on the couch together, I took a deep breath. "I want you to know that I'm willing to work on us, but we have to be honest with each other. No more lies, no more secrets. I promise, Jake." "I'm committing to transparency from now on," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "I want our marriage to be built on trust again. I'll do whatever it takes to prove it to you." It was a small step, but it felt significant. I realized that while the road to rebuilding our marriage would be long and challenging, we were both willing to put in the effort. This shared commitment was a step toward healing, and I could see the potential for something better emerging from the ashes of our betrayal. As time went on, I continued my advocacy work and began gathering feedback from those I had met through the support groups. It felt empowering to help others who had been silenced, to provide a voice for those who had felt powerless. In doing so, I discovered a part of myself that had been dormant for too long, one that was passionate about justice and healing, not just for myself, but for others as well. Dr. Miller's fate was still pending as the investigation dragged on, but I had learned to let go of the anger that had consumed me. I felt lighter, as if the weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders. My focus was now on the present, on rebuilding my life, and on forging a new path with Sarah, one that was built on honesty and mutual respect. One evening, as we sat outside, the stars twinkling above us, I turned to Sarah and smiled. "We might not have all the answers yet, but I think we're on the right track." She looked at me, her eyes sparkling with hope. "I believe that too, Jake. I know we can rebuild what we lost, but it's going to take time and effort from both of us." We spent the rest of the evening talking and laughing, rediscovering the connection that had once drawn us together. It was a small but significant moment, one that reminded me that healing was possible, even after profound betrayal. As I reflected on everything that had happened, I realized that my journey had taught me invaluable lessons. I had learned the importance of standing up for myself and holding others accountable for their actions. I had discovered the strength within me to fight for justice, not just for myself, but for others as well. And perhaps most importantly, I had learned that forgiveness, while difficult, is a powerful tool that can lead to profound healing. In the end, I recognized that life would always be filled with challenges, but it was how we responded to those challenges that truly defined us. I was on the path to reclaiming my life, my marriage, and my sense of self. And while the future was still uncertain, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next.